You ever been just scrolling through your phone and you feel it, that little pang of pressure? You're watching someone's perfect vacation, their amazing new job, and you can't help but think, man, why isn't my life like that? It's a feeling we all know, right? But what if I told you there's actual science behind that stress? A hidden pathway in our brains that turns just looking into wanting, and wanting into worrying. Okay, let's get into it.
So, to start this off, we're going to unpack a pretty intense word voyeurism. Now, I know what you're thinking, but just hang with me for a second. The official clinical definition is super specific. It's about secretly watching people for sexual gratification. And yeah, it's classified as an actual psychological disorder.
But the word has kind of taken on a life of its own. What used to be this niche clinical term has exploded into what you could call cultural voyeurism. And this isn't about a disorder at all. It's about our society's fascination with watching other people's private lives. Think reality TV and, of course, our social media feeds. The motivation here isn't sex, it's just curiosity, drama, and this is the big one, comparison. And that leads us right to the most powerful tool for this kind of cultural voyeurism ever made, the smartphone that's probably in your hand or pocket right now. It's become our own personal digital peephole. Because let's be real for a second, Instagram isn't real life. I mean, think about it. Every single time we unlock our phones and pop open an app, we're basically peeking through this little digital hole. And we're not just seeing photos, we're looking at these carefully crafted, edited, and perfectly packaged versions of what other people want us to see. This quote just nails it perfectly. We spend our free time comparing ourselves to an ideal that no one has actually experienced. We're measuring our own messy, real, behind-the-scenes lives against something that's literally impossible because it doesn't even exist in the first place. And how is that ideal built? Well, it's all about selection. We've all become our own personal publicists, right? We only share the highlights, our best camera angle, our biggest wins, the good deeds we do, those perfect-looking relationships. It's a highlight reel. It's not the full movie. We're all putting on a little show for each other. Here's a great way to think about it. A social media profile is like looking through the front window of a house. You see the nice, clean living room, but you have absolutely no idea if there's a mountain of laundry just out of frame or if people are arguing in the kitchen. It's always, always an incomplete picture. So we've kind of set the stage here. We know what we're looking at, these perfectly curated lives. Now let's dig into how this actually messes with us. Let's look under the hood at the psychological engine that drives this whole thing. But why do we even do this? What is this deep, almost automatic impulse to hold up our own lives against these filtered images we see on a screen? Well, luckily for us, science actually has a name for it. It's called social comparison orientation, or SCO for short. And look, it's not a character flaw or anything, it's a personality trait. Some people just naturally have a stronger tendency to look at others to figure out how they're doing themselves. It's a spectrum, and every single one of us falls somewhere on it. And here's the really crucial part. Research shows that people who score high on that SCO scale, they're just more vulnerable. They tend to report higher levels of stress, more self-doubt, feelings of inadequacy, and a lot more anxiety. It's like their comparison engine is always running in the background, and that takes a real toll. Okay, so this is where it all snaps into focus. We've talked about the watching, and we've talked about the comparing. Now let's pull back the curtain on the hidden link that explains how comparing ourselves to others online can make us feel so deeply, profoundly alone. So what is the mechanism here? How does this simple act of comparison, something everybody does, actually translate into that painful feeling of being rejected or left out? Well, the answer is probably not what you think. This is the big breakthrough. A recent study found this hidden pathway. It turns out social comparison doesn't directly make us feel rejected. No, instead, for people who have a high tendency to compare, it ramps up their stress levels. And it's that stress that actually pulls the trigger on the feeling of being excluded. Let's just walk through it step by step. Step 1, you have a high tendency to compare yourself to others. Step 2, you start scrolling, and that tendency kicks into overdrive, which raises your stress. Step 3, your brain, which is now swimming in stress hormones, starts to interpret everything a little more negatively. It leads you to perceive rejection even when it's not actually there. And what's really mind-blowing here is that the researchers figured out that stress is basically the whole story. When they crunched the numbers and accounted for that rise in stress, the direct link between comparing and feeling rejected, it just vanished. it became statistically insignificant. So stress isn't just a piece of the puzzle, it's the bridge that connects the two.
But get this. Here's a super fascinating twist. The researchers wondered if this worked in reverse. Did comparison and stress also mess with positive feelings, like feeling accepted? Turns out it didn't. The effect just wasn't there.
So here's the key takeaway from that. This whole mechanism seems to be wired specifically for negativity. The comparison stress cycle is like a sniper, and it's aimed directly at our fear of rejection, while it kind of leaves our feelings of belonging alone. We just seem to be uniquely vulnerable to feeling pushed away by this. So, after all that, what are we supposed to do? If stress is the real bad guy here, how do we even begin to fix the problem?
Well, the study's authors had a really sharp idea. Our first instinct is usually to say, oh, we need to promote more inclusivity, more belonging. And don't get me wrong, that's super important. But it might be missing the bigger picture.
A more effective solution might be to work on the other side of the problem, to actively get rid of the situations, the language, and the social cues that trigger that feeling of being excluded to begin with. It's about prevention. It's about lowering the stress by just removing the triggers this whole sensitive system is designed to react to.
So I'll just leave you with this one question. The next time you find yourself deep down the rabbit hole of a social media feed, just pause for a second and ask yourself, am I just looking, or is my brain's comparison engine revving up, quietly flooding me with stress? Knowing the difference, well, that might just be the whole key.